What you eat in the first hours after waking doesn't just affect your morning, it establishes your cognitive, metabolic, and energy patterns for the entire day. That early morning meal represents a unique metabolic window where specific food choices can either optimize your brain chemistry for sustained focus and mental clarity or trigger hormonal cascades that leave you foggy, hungry, and energy depleted by mid-morning. The difference between these two dramatically different outcomes isn't merely about eating healthy. It's about understanding the precise intersection of chronobiology, brain chemistry, and digestive physiology that makes the pre-9 a.m. eating window entirely unique from any other time of day. By aligning your morning nutrition with these biological rhythms, you can create a foundation of sustained mental clarity and physical energy that transforms your entire day. Before I share the specific morning nutrition strategy that research suggests creates optimal cognitive function and metabolic stability, let's understand what makes this early window so critically important. In the first 2-3 hours after waking, your body experiences what chronobiologists call the cortisol awakening response, a natural spike in cortisol that activates energy mobilization, sharpens attention, and prepares your body for daily activity. This natural cortisol rhythm creates a distinct metabolic state, where your food choices interact differently with your body than they would at any other time. Simultaneously, your brain is transitioning from sleep-dominant neurotransmitter patterns to waking activation, with specific nutrient requirements to synthesize alertness, promoting chemicals like dopamine, acetylcholine, and norepinephrine. This neurochemical shift creates a critical window where targeted nutrition can either enhance or undermine your cognitive function for the hours ahead. What's particularly fascinating is how newer research from the field of chrononutrition, the study of how food timing affects health, has revealed that identical meals consumed at different times of day create substantially different metabolic responses. A study from the Department of Nutrition at the University of California demonstrated that the exact same meal produced nearly 30% higher blood glucose elevations and significantly different insulin responses when consumed in the evening versus the morning, indicating a fundamental shift in how our bodies process nutrients across the day. Given this time-dependent metabolic processing, what specific nutritional approach best aligns with your body's morning physiology to optimize both mental performance and energy stability? The answer lies in understanding the core principles rather than focusing on any single perfect breakfast food. The first principle of optimal pre-9 a.m. nutrition involves strategic protein selection and timing. Research from the University of Missouri's Department of Physiology has demonstrated that consuming 25-30 grams of protein within the first hour of waking substantially increases production of tyrosine hydroxylase, the enzyme responsible for converting tyrosine into dopamine and norepinephrine, neurotransmitters directly linked to focus, motivation, and mental clarity. This early protein consumption creates what neuroscientists call an amplified precursor availability state, where the brain receives an abundant supply of the raw materials needed for optimal function. Not all protein sources create equal cognitive effects, however. Animal studies from the Salk Institute have shown that protein sources containing specific amino acid profiles, particularly those rich in tyrosine, tryptophan, and leucine, create more pronounced improvements in executive function and attention sustainability. This includes options like pasture-raised eggs, plain Greek yogurt, high-quality whey protein, salmon, and specific plant combinations like quinoa with pumpkin seeds or lentils with hemp seeds that create complete amino acid profiles. The second core principle involves carbohydrate selection and quantity. Unlike later in the day, your morning metabolism is uniquely primed for carbohydrate utilization, with enhanced insulin sensitivity and glycogen-depleted muscles, and liver ready to efficiently process glucose. However, the specific type and amount of carbohydrates dramatically influences whether this creates sustained energy or triggers the glucose-insulin roller coaster that undermines mental clarity. Research from Harvard's Department of Nutrition has identified a specific threshold where carbohydrate intake in the morning provides cognitive benefits without triggering excessive insulin release. Approximately 15-30 grams of complex carbohydrates with at least 5 grams of fiber. This precise range delivers sufficient glucose to support brain function, which requires about 120 grams of glucose daily, without overwhelming insulin sensitivity or triggering inflammatory responses that impair cognitive function. Optimal carbohydrate choices in this context include foods with what nutritional scientists call a low to moderate glycemic load coupled with high micronutrient density, options like berries, especially blueberries, which contain specific anthocyanins linked to improved executive function. Steel-cut oats, sweet potatoes, apples, and specific ancient grains like amaranth and buckwheat. These provide steady glucose release while delivering the cofactors needed for optimal neurotransmitter synthesis. The third principle involves strategic fat inclusion. Morning fat consumption serves a fundamentally different purpose than protein or carbohydrates. It's not primarily about providing immediate energy or neurotransmitter precursors, but about hormonal modulation, nutrient absorption, and extending the satiety signal from your meal. Research from the University of California, San Francisco has shown that including 10-15 grams of specific fats in your morning meal produces more stable energy levels throughout the morning by blunting the initial glucose response while extending its duration. The critical distinction here lies in the fat composition. A study from Ohio State University demonstrated that different fatty acid profiles create substantially different cognitive effects, with foods containing specific medium-chain triglycerides and omega-3 fatty acids showing the most pronounced benefits for sustained attention and working memory. Practical options include avocado, walnuts, ground flaxseed, wild salmon, pasture-raised eggs, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Beyond these macronutrient considerations, the timing of your morning meal relative to waking plays a significant role in its cognitive effects. Research from the Department of Nutritional Sciences at the University of Illinois has demonstrated that consuming breakfast within 30-60 minutes of waking creates more stable glucose response and enhanced cognitive performance compared to identical meals consumed 2+ hours after waking. This timing aligns with your natural cortisol rhythm, creating what researchers call hormonal synergy between food-induced metabolic responses and your body's innate circadian patterns. What about that morning cup of coffee or tea? Their effects during this early window deserve special consideration. Research from Johns Hopkins University has shown that caffeine consumed within 90 minutes of waking generally produces less optimal effects than when consumed 90 to 120 minutes after waking. This counterintuitive finding relates to how caffeine interacts with your natural cortisol awakening response. Consuming caffeine when cortisol is already naturally elevated creates diminished cognitive benefits and accelerated tolerance development. For those who still prefer early caffeine, pairing it with specific foods can substantially modify its effects. A study published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry demonstrated that consuming caffeine alongside sources of L-theanine, found in green tea, matcha, and some mushroom varieties, and specific antioxidants, abundant in berries and cacao, creates a more sustained, focused cognitive effect without the typical mid-morning crash. What does this research translate to in practical terms? Let me share 3 specific morning meal templates that align with these principles, each designed for slightly different preferences and lifestyles while maintaining the core elements that support optimal morning cognition and energy. The first template, what nutritional researchers call the sustained performance pattern, combines pasture-raised eggs, providing ideal amino acid profiles and choline for acetylcholine synthesis, with half an avocado, delivering monounsaturated fats and potassium, and a half cup of berries, offering low glycemic carbohydrates and specific flavonoids that enhance blood flow to the brain. This combination has been shown in research from Tufts University to create a sustained 4 or 5 hour cognitive performance window before hunger or energy decline occurs. For those who prefer a plant-based approach, the second template combines a 1/4 cup of hemp hearts and 2 tablespoons of almond butter, creating a complete amino acid profile, with half a cup of steel-cut oats, providing slow-release carbohydrates and specific beta-glucans that support healthy glucose metabolism, and a 1/4 cup of blueberries, offering cognitive-enhancing anthocyanins. Research from Loma Linda University has shown this specific combination produces comparable cognitive performance metrics to animal protein-based options, with particularly strong effects on creative problem-solving capacity. The third template addresses the needs of those with time constraints or who prefer a simpler morning routine. This approach combines a high-quality protein powder, preferably one containing both whey and egg white proteins for complementary amino acid profiles, with frozen berries, a tablespoon of almond butter, and either unsweetened almond milk or water. While liquid breakfasts sometimes receive criticism, research from the University of Toronto's Department of Nutritional Sciences has found that carefully designed smoothies containing these specific components can create virtually identical blood glucose, insulin, and cognitive performance outcomes compared to whole food versions with similar nutritional profiles. I want to speak directly to you watching this video right now. Have you noticed how many conventional breakfast options, even those marketed as healthy, contain nutritional profiles almost perfectly designed to undermine morning cognitive performance? The typical American breakfast, dominated by refined carbohydrates, sweeteners, and minimal protein, creates precisely the glucose-insulin pattern that research associates with reduced executive function, mid-morning energy crashes, and increased stress reactivity. What I'm suggesting isn't about restrictive eating or complicated nutrition. It's about aligning your first meal with your body's morning physiology to unlock cognitive potential you already possess. If you're finding value in understanding the science behind optimal morning nutrition, consider subscribing to this channel. Unlike typical nutrition content focused on calories or weight management, we explore evidence-based approaches to optimizing how your brain and body actually function. The comment section below is open for your experiences. Have you noticed differences in your mental clarity or energy based on your morning food choices? Your observations might help others connect these important dots in their own nutrition journey. Beyond the core nutritional principles we've explored, there are several additional dimensions to morning nutrition that can further enhance cognitive function and energy stability throughout the day. These factors, including meal temperature, hydration status, and specific micronutrient combinations, create what nutritional neuroscientists call metabolic context that influences how your body processes the primary macronutrients. The temperature of your morning meal may seem like a minor consideration, but research from Japan's National Institute of Health and Nutrition has documented interesting effects on both digestive efficiency and cognitive performance. Their studies found that meals served between 100 to 130 degrees, 38 to 54 Celsius, essentially warm but not hot, optimize digestive enzyme activity while enhancing nutrient extraction compared to identical meals served cold or very hot. This temperature range also showed modest benefits for morning thermal regulation, potentially supporting the body's natural awakening processes. This temperature effect appears particularly relevant for protein digestion and utilization. A study from the Department of Food Science at Cornell University demonstrated that warm protein sources showed approximately 13% higher digestibility and amino acid availability compared to cold sources with identical nutrient profiles. For those consuming protein-rich morning meals, this suggests potential benefits from options like warm eggs or heated protein-rich grains, compared to cold options like overnight oats or protein shakes. Though the difference, while measurable, represents an optimization rather than a fundamental principle. The timing and composition of morning hydration represents another overlooked factor that significantly impacts how your body processes breakfast. Research from the Human Performance Laboratory at the University of Connecticut has shown that even mild dehydration upon waking, as little as 1 to 2% below optimal hydration status, creates measurable impairments in cognitive processing speed, working memory, and executive function before any food is consumed. This dehydration effect compounds overnight when the body undergoes 7 to 8 hours without fluid intake, creating what researchers call a sub-baseline cognitive state that many people incorrectly attribute to insufficient sleep or nutrition. The optimal approach involves consuming 16-20 ounces of water within 30 minutes of waking, ideally before any food or caffeine. However, the composition of this water matters more than most realize. Research from the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Alabama has demonstrated that adding a small amount of mineral salt, approximately 1.4 teaspoon of sea salt or Himalayan salt per 16 ounces, significantly improves cellular hydration through enhanced electrolyte transport, creating measurable improvements in cognitive function compared to plain water alone. For those who find plain water unappealing in the morning, research offers interesting alternatives. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that water infused with specific flavor compounds, particularly citrus, cucumber, or mint, triggered enhanced digestive enzyme production through olfactory stimulation, potentially improving nutritional absorption from subsequent meals. The key distinction was using actual food compounds rather than artificial flavors, as the latter showed no significant benefit beyond improved fluid consumption compliance. The specific micronutrient composition of your morning meal represents another dimension with surprising cognitive implications. While macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, provide the structural foundation, certain micronutrient combinations act as metabolic catalysts that significantly influence how effectively your body converts those macronutrients into brain-available energy and neurotransmitter precursors. Research from King's College London has identified 5 micronutrients with particularly strong associations to morning cognitive performance: choline, magnesium, vitamin B6, zinc, and specific flavonoid compounds. These nutrients serve as cofactors for the enzymatic reactions that convert dietary amino acids into neurotransmitters, with studies showing that borderline insufficiency, intake levels above deficiency but below optimization, can reduce cognitive performance even when macronutrient intake is ideal. Practical food sources of these critical cofactors include egg yolks, providing choline and vitamin B6, pumpkin seeds, delivering zinc and magnesium, specific berries like blackberries and blueberries, offering key flavonoids, and dark leafy greens, containing magnesium and additional flavonoid compounds. Research suggests incorporating at least 2 distinct sources of these nutrients in your morning meal for optimal cognitive support. What about the controversial practice of breakfast skipping or time-restricted eating that delays the first meal? This approach, often called intermittent fasting, has gained substantial attention for potential metabolic benefits. The research here offers nuanced insights that depend heavily on individual metabolic factors and activity patterns. Studies from the Salk Institute have demonstrated that restricting eating to specific time windows, typically 8 to 10 hours, creates beneficial metabolic adaptations for many people. but with an important caveat regarding morning cognitive function. For those who choose to delay their first meal, research from the University of Bath's Department of Health has identified specific conditions where this approach can support, rather than undermine, cognitive performance. The key factors include adequate hydration upon waking, 16-20 ounces of water with minerals, sufficient fat adaptation, typically requiring 2 to 3 weeks of consistent fasting practice, and appropriate activity levels during the fasted period. Under these conditions, many individuals maintain stable cognitive function while potentially gaining the metabolic benefits of time-restricted eating. However, the same research identified specific populations who typically experience impaired morning cognitive function with delayed eating, regardless of adaptation period. This includes those with high-intensity morning physical demands, individuals with naturally fast metabolisms, those with blood glucose regulation challenges, and people with particularly demanding cognitive morning work. For these groups, the optimal approach typically involves earlier nutritional intake aligned with the principles we've discussed. Beyond general principles, certain specific foods deserve special mention for their unique effects on morning cognitive function. Blueberries, for example, contain a specific anthocyanin profile that research from the University of Reading has linked to enhanced executive function, with effects becoming measurable within 2 to 3 hours of consumption. Their studies showed that adding just 1 or 4 cups of blueberries to a morning meal improved cognitive task performance by approximately 5 to 7% compared to identical meals without blueberries. Similarly, certain functional mushroom varieties, particularly lion's mane and cordyceps, contain unique polysaccharide compounds that research from Malaysia's University Malaya has associated with enhanced attention, focus, and stress resilience when consumed in the morning. These effects appear to result from their interaction with the body's natural cortisol awakening response, potentially creating what researchers term adaptive synergy between the body's innate awakening processes and these specific compounds. The morning consumption of specific fermented foods represents another interesting dimension with emerging research support. Studies from Stanford University's Department of Microbiology and Immunology have demonstrated that consuming small amounts of fermented foods, particularly those containing diverse bacterial strains like kefir, kimchi, or properly prepared yogurt, in the morning meal may enhance the gut-brain connection through stimulation of the vagus nerve, potentially improving cognitive clarity through what researchers call the microbiota gut-brain axis. What about the order in which you consume different components of your morning meal? Intriguingly, research from Weill Cornell Medical College has documented that the sequence of macronutrient consumption can significantly impact both blood glucose response and subsequent cognitive effects. Their studies found that consuming vegetables and/or protein before carbohydrate-rich foods in the same meal reduced post-meal glucose elevations by approximately 30 to 40% and improved post-meal cognitive performance compared to consuming the identical foods in reverse order or mixed together. For practical application, this suggests potential benefits from structuring your morning meal to begin with protein-rich components before consuming any carbohydrate-rich foods. For example, starting with eggs or yogurt before consuming toast or fruit might create more favorable glucose response patterns, potentially extending mental clarity. As we integrate these various dimensions, it becomes clear that optimal morning nutrition isn't about rigidly following any single approach, but about aligning core principles with your individual needs, preferences, and circumstances. The most successful morning nutrition strategy is one you can implement consistently that supports your specific cognitive and energy demands and that creates the subjective experience of sustained focus without heaviness or energy fluctuations. For those wanting to optimize their morning nutrition using these evidence-based principles, I recommend a systematic approach. Begin by ensuring proper hydration upon waking, then build a morning meal that includes adequate protein, 25-30 gr, appropriate carbohydrates, 15-30 gr with at least 5 Ju of fiber, and strategic fats, 10 to 15 G, consumed within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Include specific micronutrient-rich foods, particularly those containing choline, magnesium, B vitamins, and beneficial flavonoids. Pay attention to meal temperature, food sequencing, and timing relative to caffeine consumption for further optimization. Most importantly, observe your own response. While research provides valuable guidelines, individual variation in metabolism, gut microbiome composition, hormone function, and gene expression means that your optimal approach may include personalized adjustments to these general principles. The true measure of effectiveness is your subjective experience of sustained cognitive clarity, stable energy, and appropriate hunger patterns in the hours following your morning meal. The perspective I've shared represents current scientific understanding, but nutrition science continues to evolve. Emerging research in chronobiology and nutrigenomics suggests that morning nutritional needs may be even more individualized and time-dependent than currently understood. As new findings emerge, the fundamental principles we've discussed will likely remain valid, while specific applications may be refined with greater precision and personalization. The investment you make in optimizing your morning nutrition extends far beyond those early hours. By establishing stable glucose patterns, optimal neurotransmitter production, and balanced energy from the day's beginning, you create a foundation that supports cognitive performance, emotional resilience, and physical well-being throughout your entire day. In this way, what you eat before 9 a.m. truly does represent one of the most powerful leverage points for enhancing your overall quality of life and effectiveness. I encourage you to experiment with the principles and approaches we've discussed, paying careful attention to how different morning nutrition patterns affect your specific cognitive function, energy levels, and overall well-being. Your personal data, your subjective experience combined with any objective measurements you choose to track, represents the most valuable information for developing your optimal morning nutrition strategy. In nutrition, as in many aspects of health, the most powerful insights often emerge from the intersection of scientific principles and personal experience.